Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum, and welcome to another edition of Debunked here on INX Prime. My name is Sulaimaan Ravat. We've been covering a variety of issues in recent weeks. We focused on Al-Aqsa Week a few weeks ago. We spoke about what was happening internationally, Trump and Greenland and Venezuela not too long ago. And yeah, each week we try and unpack something a little bit topical, relevant, what's being discussed, what's on your minds, around which you have thoughts and you have opinions and you have perspective. And this week we're taking a look at local politics here in South Africa. Last week it was specific about the safety around scholar transport and what transpired with that very horrific, tragic incident where multiple young students lost their lives. But we take a bit of a more broad-based overview, some of the recent happenings. Just today, John Steenhuisen announcing he's not going to seek a third term as DA leader. We know recently Malema has got legal woes after the court proceedings in terms of firing that or discharging a firearm in public. We're also starting to pick up the momentum leading into next week's SONA. So there's a lot to discuss with political analyst Sandile Swana, who joins us on the program. Good day, Sandile, and welcome.
Good day, Sulaimaan, and good day to your viewers. Thank you very much.
So, I mean, it was a story that broke yesterday already, that John Steenhuisen was going to announce that he was not going to stand for a third term as DA leader. It came as a bit of a surprise because he was quite adamant he was going to do so. One got the impression that he was cleaning out his political enemies from within the party. We saw what happened with Deon George and the like. It seemed like he had the momentum to carry him through despite the scandals around his mismanagement of funds, his own personal funds, not being able to make deadlines with regards to his credit card payments and the like. Yes, the DA cleared him internally in terms of the DA's own credit card and the usage thereof. But it would seem like something happened behind the scenes which basically put him into a bit of a corner. And it seems like he would have struck a deal to remain on as the Minister of Agriculture and give way for a new DA leader.
Indeed. I think that over the past 27 years, I mean, until now, I think we've got to give credit where it's due. He started this in 1999 and rose from being a councillor to today being a leader of the party itself. It's quite an achievement. And when he addressed the press conference, he was in a buoyant mood, pointing out all his achievements, although maybe in some cases adding too much color to some of them. But nonetheless, he is in a joyous mood. So what you need to then say is that the elders of the DA, the Tony Leons, the Helen Zillers, and the big business which controls the whole thing, have given him a good golden parachute. So that is really what his happiness is about. The going out is a foregone conclusion. So that is where we are. I thought that Steenhuisen was bulletproof after he was able to put Deon George to the sword. But clearly, I think his handling of the farmers, especially around FMD, foot and mouth disease, meant that that lobby, which is well-funded, which carries a lot of money and is part of big business itself, probably got annoyed with him. And secondly, it is clear that the right-wing elements feel that Steenhuisen is not supporting their cause relative to their support for Trump and the things that they're saying to Trump, that he's not as committed to work with them on the Bella thing and the expropriation of land without compensation and those types of things. So basically, what this is a belief by the elders of the DA and the billionaires that support them that the ANC is ready for the taking. The country is ready for a strong swing to the right.
So how would you assess his 2 terms, right, as DA leader? We know that his critics will say, well, Maimane was fired back in was it 2019, if I remember correctly, Steenhuisen, if you look at the last national and provincial government elections, didn't fare all that better in terms of what the DA had to show at the polls. Yes, some would say they kind of got lucky in that the MK ate into the ANC's majority, and then the ANC couldn't come to a agreement with either the MK or the EFF, and therefore the DA became central to the whole GNU. But it was no achievement on the part of Steenhuisen. His supporters would say, well, the party was in decline by the time Memani left. They were losing their traditional support to the Freedom Front Plus and other such parties, and that even if there was not gigantic growth in terms of electoral support, he was able to stabilize the party and leave it now in a much stronger position. Which of those two views would you incline to?
The first thing I'll say is this. In terms of caliber, I think that it was a downgrade from Maimane to Steenhuisen. And there's a potential upgrade now again from Steenhuisen to Jordan Hill-Lewis. Steenhuisen is a blue-eyed boy of big business and a certain type of white politics, let's call it that. Because when Steenhuisen rose to the leadership, he was almost in hiding from his scandals in KZN. He had been removed as leader in KZN, and they went and soaked him in bleach, put in some detergents, and all of a sudden there he rises to the top, whitewashed. So I've listened to those claims that he was making today. That's why I said he might have added a lot of color to his achievements. But it's fine. I think the climate favored him. The stupidity and errors, unforced errors, what I would call unforced errors of the ANC leadership, acting against each other, and they continue to do so, to act against each other. They've produced the MK party now, and you can see there's a fiasco inside. My personal view is that the right wing, and the DA is part of the right wing, is now convinced that internally the ANC is weak enough that elements who may even be pro-DA within the ANC could allow a situation to arise where the GNU and coalitions within municipalities and even provincial coalitions, even in KZN, are led by the DA. I think the right wing sees a great opportunity to swing South Africa and plug South Africa into Trump and the USA. And Steenhuisen correctly, and I think there is a measure of credit you can give to him since the last Lekhuta and maybe even before, to understand that issues must be canvassed within the GNU. For instance, they created a disgraceful stalemate in the budget last year. And I say disgraceful because they brought in issues that favor white interests, etc., into the discussion about the budget, which is why Action SA and others had to take a stand against them. So Steenhuisen lately has been able to negotiate ahead of time. So the State of the Nation address, the January 8th statement, the Lekhuta statement of the ANC would fit very well with Steenhuisen's speeches because much preparation and groundwork has been done. So there you can give him credit. You can give him credit. But to say that Steenhuisen was an outstanding leader, this, that, and the other, that is all far-fetched.
Now, what do we know about the Mayor of Cape Town, Jordan Hill-Lewis? He seems to be doing well. Cape Townians would perhaps be more aware than South Africans in other parts of the country. Ideologically speaking, is he more compatible to right-wing politics? Is he going to be more dearer to the likes of AfriForum and others? The more conservative base that the DA is so protective of, and that element within big business?
There are two ways of being conservative. I wouldn't easily be quick to say that he would be an out and out racist, but there are other ways of being racist nonetheless, of being conservative in South Africa. For instance, they are just busy building a wall along the highway from the airport in Cape Town, screening the township from the black townships from the highway. Now, that is a commonsensical liberal view that these people are committing crime on the highway. But what about the structural problems? Every other community, there are many communities that are facing the highway. Why do they not need a wall? Why does this particular one need a wall? So, and Cape Town itself, as a city, is very clean, very well organized. But as you walk, for instance, around Greenpoint Stadium, immediately you see a shanty town, what they call a squatter camp, and pockets of squatter camps in Cape Town. So Cape Town is very clean, very well organized, in the same way that it would have been under apartheid. The so-called colored communities and the African communities in Cape Town are not benefiting materially in a manner that they become equal to the whites in Cape Town. Actually, when I looked at the statistics, both the coloreds and the Africans, those two groups are 4 times less educated than the whites in terms of tertiary post-matric education. So the percentage of that population, so for instance, it would be that the colors have got 11% of their people having completed tertiary education, where the whites have got 44%. Africans would have 10%, where the whites would have 44%. So basically, in terms of what matters, in terms of building wealth now and in the future, those non-European communities are at a great disadvantage. But in terms of saying he's doing a good job in just bringing the city to the standard that it was during apartheid, yes, from that perspective, he's doing a good job, because that's exactly what the ANC could not do.
So finally, just to wrap up the DA part of the discussion, right? What prospects are there for John Steenhuisen now as a former leader? I'm sure that he stuck a deal behind the scenes to stay on as minister. So that's like another 3 years before that term expires. He's currently, I think, around 49. 52 is a fairly young age in 3 years' time for a politician. And once you've been leader of a party like the DA, I mean, I suppose he could be like Tony Leon and take a 5-year term as ambassador somewhere. But it's never the same, right? After you kind of hit that peak.
No, I mean, he's going the Tony Leon route. I must confess that I expected that today, that they might send him to Thailand or Japan as an ambassador or something of the kind. But that is the direction I think he's going. But what I will continue to emphasize is that he has got a golden parachute. I don't think they are going to throw him into the street. He may not get a job like Andre de Ruyter. I mean, de Ruyter failed at ESCOM. He comes back into the country. He then gets absorbed by big universities in the Western world, comes back now as a consultant to South Africa to advise ESCOM how to do the right thing. You know, there are 7 people who are just big blue-eyed boys of Western capital and also white monopoly capital within the Republic of South Africa.
Now, the EFF has had challenges of their own. The court ruling has put Malema in a bit of a spot of bother, if you like. Many are wondering that what next for him? What are his legal prospects, and how can that impact on his political career?
I think that obviously there are political considerations here. It's an interesting thing. I was on another panel interview about this Malema thing with a lawyer. And this lawyer raised an interesting point that, you know, the people who opened this case is AfriForum. Because AfriForum, out of the blue, they are so concerned about the safety of EFF members that Malema is endangering EFF members, and the AfriForum must take steps to protect them and pursue this case. So there is that angle. So the right wing, whether instructed by Trump or guided by whatever else guides them, have a duty to keep the EFF out of power and to keep Malema out of politics, or to take him out of politics in the quickest possible way, regardless of the instrument that may be used. This court case may be an instrument to achieve exactly that. Now, Steenhuisen today mentioned that the mission of the DA which is also the mission of big business, is to keep both MK and EFF out of power, out of any type of structure of power, whether it's in KZN, as you've seen, they've put very serious effort to make sure that the GPU in KZN remains, and that nationally, MK, regardless of how many votes they've got, the EFF will never get in there. So that effort is in motion. So Malema, like all other political leaders, has to ask himself from his political ancestors, how do you lead a party from his prison? And number two, he still has got legally avenues to appeal both the sentence and the conviction itself. In other words, what type of sentence? Because he could get a sentence that is a fine without a prison term, maybe might accept that. But if the sentence is unfavorable for whatever reasons, he may want to appeal that. And the conviction itself, I thought that the conviction was still highly appealable in any event.
What about his deputy, Godrej Gardi, and the statements he's made in public about them spending R1 billion and Malema trying to walk that back? What is that telling us about the internal dynamics of a party that suffered a massive blow when Floyd Shivambu decided to leave the party? And that was after the blow of electoral decline back in 2024 in the national and provincial government elections. Have they been able to rebuild, or are they still struggling? And what would that mean for their prospects when it comes to the elections later in the year?
There are different types of politics in South Africa. You must remember that the politics that we were running before 1994, there was no money. And the UDF and the Mass Democratic Movement was very, very successful without money. So by actually providing political education to the masses and actually leading the masses. So the capital that you needed was social capital. Then some people have converted the black politics into politics of money, and blacks don't have money. So if you go and compete in the politics of money and you don't have money, you're going to have a problem. But that is not to say Biko, Tambo, and Sobukwe never taught us proper politics, how to mobilize the non-European majority here in South Africa. So if they feel that they have a problem, it's a problem they've created for themselves. However, there is something in the documentation of the EFF, because I attended the other, not this last one, the one before, big conference at Nazareth, where it became clear that before they went into the 2021 elections, they had developed a strategy of how to do word by word, VD by VD organization and mobilization in order to improve their electoral performance and also the control of the wards. And because of COVID, they were unable to implement that document that they developed in 2019. So they were now, after COVID, implementing it. So the first time they are going to test that strategy, whether it is working, is in this election. But what is important about that is that they actually improved their performance in 2021 local government elections without even implementing that strategy. So my view was that with the leadership that they've elected, including the likes of Godrej Gardi and so on, and implementing the strategy, they have a chance of organically improving their prospects on the ground. However, I think South Africans need to ask themselves, what is the cost of this democracy, financial cost of the democracy, and how do we fund it without handing it over to criminals to finance it?
Talking about the MK, right? We've seen the shenanigans on the one hand, changing leaders left, right, and center. On the other hand, they attempted to take control of KZN, and there was a defiant member of the NFP that stopped that. The NFP has been having its own issues. It looks like the MK would want to attempt it again sooner rather than later. We see Zuma going to Limpopo and meeting people there. What's your assessment of the MK? Many say that that 15% that they got back in 2024 is going to be difficult to sustain going into this local government elections, considering the instability within the party. And others say, underestimate Zuma at your own peril.
I go with the ones that say underestimate Zuma at your own peril. when I made my predictions about the performance of MK in the previous elections, people thought it's because I support what MK is doing. No, Zuma is the first man to win KZN outright for the ANC. There's no other president that's ever done that. So Zuma is able to do his thing, and there are parts of his things that nobody in the ANC can match. And the competition between MK and Zuma is not contesting against the DA and people like that. It's contesting specifically the ANC within the ANC. Now, in Joburg, city of Joburg, the ANC controls by far the most wards. And each ward is probably controlled by somebody that Zuma can reach using his underground methods of organization and recruit those decision makers to his side. So my view is that Zuma can easily, on a municipal by municipal, obviously it's not countrywide. There are certain municipalities, Joburg being one, Ekurhuleni being another one, where Zuma can take off the ANC wards 20 to 40%. Using this method. In other words, the politics of MK is about stripping the ANC. It's not organic mobilization.
So, coming to the ANC, right? This year, I suppose a lot of the focus will be on the local government elections. And then next year, they go into their own leadership contest. On the one hand, you're seeing a lot about Patrice Motsepe. He's declining, but people are suspicious that why is his name continuously cropping up? Is it that big business has already made a decision to fund him, to fund his campaign, to make sure he wins the ANC's elective conference, and then to make sure that the ANC and DA support him in the GNU so that their interests are protected if he becomes the next president. Simultaneously, Mashatile is the incumbent deputy president. Mbalula is kind of struggling to hide his ambitions. All of this playing out as Ramaphosa is now moving into the kind of final rounds of his tenure, one would assume. And then he's going to still deliver Sona as state president, where he's within a GNU, and he's got these dynamics that are starting to intensify and escalate within his own political party. How do you assess all of that?
My view is that to be president of South Africa and president of the ANC is now firmly in the hands of big business. So whoever big business endorses is the one that's going to be the president, regardless of whether there'll be a good president or a bad president. I cannot see any, how can I say, the ambitions of Patrice Motsepe, just seeing what he has done with his life up to now. I don't see any hindrance in his outlook in life if he were to be offered the position and the funding that he would actually refuse to take it. I don't think there's a problem there. And I don't think big business could be adverse to putting him there either, to look after their own interests. Mashatile is being scandalized left, right, and center. And my concern with both Mbalula and Mashatile, Mbalula is more likely to be funded by big business than Mashatile. I think big business simply don't want Mashatile. So the contest will then be between Fikile Mbalula and Patrice Motsepe.
To close,
and they are contesting not for your vote or my vote, they are contesting for big business.
So, as we move towards next week, which is Sona week, how would you then describe the overall political climate in South Africa in the context of the speech? One gets the impression that the majority of South Africans don't care what the president has to say in early February in recent years, simply because they feel it makes no difference.
No, it doesn't make a difference. I think both Steenhuisen and Cyril Ramaphosa, we listen to Steenhuisen. Some parts of what Steenhuisen has said are going to appear in the State of the Nation. Some of it is flowery and probably untrue. For instance, I mean, I've worked with some of my guys there. We came out with a prospective GDP growth rate for 2025 of about 0.67. compared to the year before, 0.63. So there's no change in the GDP growth rate. But Steenhuisen and Ramaphosa, in the past 4 weeks, 8 weeks, they've been saying there's a big improvement and the thing has doubled. And there is, I mean, the average for 3 quarters is 0.5 right now as we speak. So it cannot go to 1.5 or 1.3. It's not possible. So you have that element, and that the unemployment is going down. I don't know where it is going down because there's no statistical evidence of that. But then again, the issue of fixing the municipalities, fixing the sewerage, the water provisions, and all those types of things. So you must expect a slant towards municipalities. Obviously, people have commented a lot about education. People are suspicious of the matric pass rate, that actually our children are falling by the wayside. Our education system is not taking care of our children from a young age. I think they'll say something about that. The police is a mess. In as much as their document, one of them prepared by Firoz Gashalia, of what to do with the whole cluster, security cluster. Ramaphosa is forced to say something about that. Whether he's going to use that document, it's another issue. But by and large, what you've heard in January 8 statement, what you've heard from Steenhuisen today, what you heard after the Lekgotla is going to turn up next week, in the State of the Nation address.
Sandile, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciated.
Most welcome. Thank you.
That was political analyst Sandile Swana. We did quite an overview, starting with the DA, breaking news of today. Well, breaking news of yesterday, but the press conference was today, where basically Steenhuisen said he's not going to stand for a third term. More pushed than jumped, really. And then EFF, MK, and ANC, an overview and creating some context for next week's SONA. Next week on the program, we focus more on the SONA. Until then, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.